Hi, thank you for joining me, Mindy Mandell here. So today I'm going on to Book 5 of Plato's Laws. Now this book, more than any other, really deals with the outward attitudes and behaviors of someone who has been doing the work up to now. And so in many ways, I think it fits kind of our traditional image of the kinds of pithy statements that we expect from a wisdom tradition. This is sort of our image of a wisdom tradition, is telling people how to behave and what a wise person would do, or how a wise person would think about something, what their attitude would be. I do want to give a caveat though, because Platonism, more than any other system I've seen, really focuses on the state of mind of one who is wise. If you focus on just the behaviors, what ends up happening is people read those and think, oh yes, I shouldn't ever get jealous, or I should never be afraid, or I should always be courageous, and I should never feel any self-doubt. And because we do feel these ways, we could feel inadequate when reading these things, or thinking, oh, I'm just not good enough, or there's something wrong with me, I'm a bad person. Other people may read this and think it's unnatural. These systems are fake and they don't fit human nature, and no one's like this. And they dismiss it in a cynical way. Platonism, though, really recognizes the need to look at your own state of mind, to look at what wisdom is, why it is wise, and also to look at your own false beliefs and how you came to believe them. And then by working on your own state of mind, you gradually will develop the belief system that will lead to the state of mind described in this book, in Book 5 here. So as we're going through this, I think it's helpful, to see where it's going, where your efforts are leading you to, but we want to keep in mind that it's okay if you're not this person just yet, or not in every situation. The idea is to that if you're doing the work that he's been describing in books 1 through 4, and really throughout all the dialogues, then this is the state of mind that you are gradually nurturing and working towards. So with that caveat in mind, let's jump into it. So all of our translations are by Robert Gregg Bury. This first sentence, I'm actually starting with one that I don't entirely like. I'll read it and then I'll explain what is good and what is not, what I think is not so good about it. Well, of all of man's belongings, the most divine is his soul, since it is most his own. So very poetic sounding, and on the surface, it very much fits the way most of us feel about soul, but it doesn't really fit and maybe it fits what the Athenian stranger wants to say to these two people, because maybe the two people he's talking to are not really up on metaphysics. But metaphysically speaking, we are soul. It's not that it's most our own as if it's a belonging or a possession. You'd have to ask, what is it that owns the soul? It doesn't really make sense. When he says that the soul is most our own, I think it's a poetic way of saying that this is what we are. This is what we are in essence. It's most who we are. So most our own in that sense. And this idea, though, does come up throughout, and so I wanted to just start us off with this. And with this idea in mind, let's go on, and we're going to see a number of different pithy sayings, which may seem a little bit disconnected, and it gives it sort of that feeling of other wisdom traditions that throw out a lot of wisdom. A lot of this maybe makes a nice meme on social media. I've actually used some of it on Twitter. But again, we do want to see it in the whole of this dialogue, that you're expected to be doing the work described in books 1 through 4, the kind of education of the soul that he advocates. Okay, so in charging people to honor their own souls, next, after the gods who rule in the secondary divinities, I am giving a right injunction. But there is hardly a person of us all who pays honor rightly, although he fancies he does so. For honor paid to a thing divine is beneficent, whereas nothing that is maleficent confers honor. And he that thinks to magnify his soul by words or gifts or obeisances, while he is improving it no whit in goodness, fancies indeed that he is paying it honor, but in fact does not do so. So a lot of religious traditions teach that if you love God, if you are humble in the face of God, you are being a good person. And this is certainly not every religious person today is like this, but it's certainly common. And it was also common in Plato's day as well. But what Plato is saying here is no, that is not what it means to live a spiritual life. To live a spiritual life is to make your soul as godlike as is humanly possible. And that means to develop the virtues in the soul and to be as good as you can be. That is the way to honor the soul. Okay, then he gives a list of ways that we wrong our soul. And you can see here that the list, that there's a long section from 727b to 728a. I'm just putting them here in bullet form. I always encourage people to read the dialogues on their own. I'm pulling out what I think are some key points that could be used as a kind of roadmap guiding you through it. But really, I do recommend you read it on your own. So with that in mind, here's a bullet list of the various points that he's going to discuss in these sections. So the first is lauding our abilities, doing whatever we please. We see this a lot, especially I'm an American. We see this a lot in America, the idea of being an individual. I can do whatever I want. I have the right to do whatever I want. I have the right to be selfish, and so on. So that is the first of the wrongs that we do to our soul. The second is never taking blame or responsibility. It's always someone else's fault. I didn't do anything wrong. I don't have to look at myself. We've seen many times that looking at ourselves, recognizing our own false beliefs is key. Indulging in pleasures contrary to wisdom. This I talked about quite a bit last week and in some other videos as well. This in the Republic this is the state of mind or the condition of soul that is comparable to the democratic constitution. Indulging in every pleasure, not caring if it is wise or not. Running from pains and hardships, basically a lack of courage. Valuing physical life at any cost, putting the physical body above the soul. So that takes us back to the first quote, that the soul is what is most us. Valuing physical beauty over goodness, again, putting the body first. Craving wealth by any means, that is like the oligarchic constitution. And so what you see throughout this list is reminding you back to book 2, there was those 2 lists he gave, the human goods and the divine goods. And one is basically loving the body and the other is loving the soul. And we want to put the soul first, so loving the values of the soul, the goods of the soul, which would be the virtues, should be the highest, and the human goods, wealth and beauty and so on, those come next. And so putting those higher is a wrong that we do to our soul. All right, hardly anyone takes account of the greatest judgment, as people call it, upon evil doing. That greatest judgment is this: to grow like unto people that are wicked, and in so growing to shun good people and good counsels, and cut oneself off from them, but to cleave to the company of the wicked, and follow after them. And he that is joined to such people inevitably acts and is acted upon in the way that such people bid one another to act. So basically just that we are influenced by the people around us. So our society tends to value those human goods that I was just speaking of over the divine goods, the virtues. And we do value the virtues, but we value the human goods more. That's the conventional view. And when we are in that process of purging ourselves of that more conventional way of thinking, it can be very difficult if the people around us are still very much in that state of mind. And so we need to be careful of who is around us and who our influences are. Honor, speaking generally, consists in following the better and in doing our utmost to effect the betterment of the worse when it admits of being bettered. So here's a different view of honor from what we often see in society. Now, this idea of cancel culture is nothing new. This phrase may be new, but it's certainly not a new idea. It was around even in Plato's day. Many people will stick their nose up in the air and declare somebody a hopeless loser, and they may feel good doing that, and they walk away feeling moral and superior. But what Plato is saying here is there's no honor in that, because you're not bettering that other person. You haven't made the world a better place by doing that. And I think every one of us has been on the receiving end of that behavior at some time in our lives in the eyes of somebody. And it just feels wrong, and we just know in our hearts that there is something unjust and unfair about being written off as hopeless. And of course, the other person can walk off and feel morally superior, but you're left with yourself and you can't write yourself off. And if you know that advice is not right when that notion of wisdom is not correct when it's applied to yourself, then you know it's not correct when you apply it to someone else either. No one is nothing more than their worst moment. And we always want to encourage the best of the people around us. We want to encourage them to think differently, to learn, to grow, because that's what makes the world a better place. And that is honorable, is what Plato's saying here. So the most effective way of training the young, as well as older people themselves, is not by admonition. I think in modern English we'd say admonishment. This translation is from the 1920s. So it's not by admonishment, but by plainly practicing throughout one's own life the admonishments which one gives to others. So in other words, walk the walk, don't just talk the talk. In relation to his state and fellow citizens, that person is by far the best who, in preference to a victory at Olympia or in any other contest of war or peace, would choose to have a victorious reputation for service to his native laws, the divine laws, as being that one person above all others who has served them with distinction throughout his life. So, of course, we're putting the soul above the body, and therefore the excellence of the soul rates even higher than the excellence of the body that is represented by those victories at Olympia. Of all the goods for gods and humans alike, truth stands first. Thereof let everyone partake from his earliest days, if he purposes to become blessed and happy. That so he may live his life as a true man so long as possible. He is a trusty man, but untrustworthy is the man who loves the voluntary lie, and senseless is the man who loves the involuntary lie, and neither of these two is to be envied. I think it's self-explanatory, but just to make sure we're all on the same page, the voluntary lie refers to that lie that you know is a lie, and you want to deceive people, and that's why it's untrustworthy. Whereas the involuntary lie, I think we would just call a falsehood, because to lie means that you know it's false and you want to mislead. But if it's involuntary, it means you don't know. You don't realize that you are saying something false. You're lying to yourself, so to speak, as you lack the wisdom to recognize it, and that makes such a person senseless. And neither of these two then is to be envied. He that does no wrong is indeed a person worthy of honor, but worthy of twice as much honor and more is the person who, in addition, consents not to wrongdoers when they do wrong. For while that former person, the person who does no wrong, him or herself, that person counts as one person, but the latter person counts as many, in that he informs the magistrates of the wrongdoing of the rest. So this kind of ties back to the idea of thinking about who influences you. The other side of it is you want to think about what kind of influence are you on the people around you. So not doing wrong is, of course, a good thing, and that in itself has honor. But to be a positive influence on others and to encourage them to stop doing wrong things, that is even better. And this idea of the magistrates, it ties back to that analogy of developing a government as an analogy to developing a healthy soul. And the magistrates then represent in that analogy the wisdom-loving part of the soul that should guide the soul. And so the idea of informing the magistrates of the wrongdoing of the rest sounds like the way this wise person is influencing those around him or her. encouraging the better parts of them, the wisdom-loving parts of their own souls, to question their own behavior. So this is looking at this book, book 5, is focusing a lot on how a person developing this sort of education of the soul would act in a group, in society. And so it has a lot of parallels then to book 5 of the Republic, which also deals with a lot of these themes. Okay, upon temperance and upon wisdom, one should bestow the same praise that was also mentioned in book 4. And upon all the other goods as well, which he who possesses them can not only keep himself, but can share also with others. So part of the beauty of wisdom is not just that it makes your own soul healthier, but that you become a positive influence on others. You can share that wisdom with others. Let every one of us be ambitious to gain excellence, but without jealousy. For a person of this character enlarges a state, since he strives hard himself and does not thwart the others by calumny. But that jealous person, thinking that calumny of others is the best way to secure his own superiority, makes less effort himself to win true excellence and disheartens his rivals by getting them unjustly blamed, whereby he causes the whole state to be ill-trained for competing in excellence, and he renders it for his part less large in fair repute. Everybody ought to be at once passionate and gentle in the highest degree. So I think this statement is pretty self-explanatory. I think it's pretty safe to assume also that Plato would not have been very impressed with high school mean girls. It's a lot of the games they play. All right, so when people commit wrongs which are remediable, one should in the first place recognize that every wrongdoer is a wrongdoer involuntarily. So here is a tenet of Plato's that we've seen come up from time to time throughout all of his dialogues. And here's the reason. No one anywhere would ever voluntarily acquire any of the greatest evils, least of all in his most precious possessions. And most precious in very truth to everyone is, as we have said, the soul. No one, therefore, will voluntarily admit into this most precious thing, the greatest evil, and live possessing it all his life long. Okay, now I have talked about this tenet of Plato's a few different places. I won't say a whole lot here, but I do want to make sure we're all on the same page here. Some of you may not have seen some of those earlier videos, or it can be kind of confusing, and so people sometimes they get it when they first read it or they first hear the explanation, and then they forget because it doesn't really fit their way of thinking. The difficulty here is that we can think of a lot of cases where people do wrong and they know it's wrong, whether you're talking about infidelity or talking about lying or stealing, all different ways that we do wrong and we know it's wrong. But where the involuntary aspect comes in is that there must be some reason the person thinks there's going to be a benefit to themselves. So I want to go back to the idea of temperance, the idea that when you develop this virtue, when it has fully flowered, we will only desire what is truly healthy for the soul. And so if we are desiring something that is not really healthy for the soul, that means that we have not yet fully developed temperance. Now take an example like, say, infidelity. So if you have a commitment with somebody, and I know some of you watching this may not think that monogamous relationships are healthy or don't believe in them for whatever reasons, but if it's a person who does believe in that and who has made that commitment and has a partner who is expecting that level of commitment and has trust in this person, then having an affair is very hurtful, and it's a very unhealthy thing. And so the person having the affair, of course, they know all of this, and the benefits on the other side are obvious. If the person decides to have the affair anyway, it means they're not really appreciating that bond. They're not appreciating the depth and beauty that develops from having a relationship that lasts decades and decades and decades. They're not seeing that commitment for the full meaning of what it is. And so because they're lacking in that understanding or that knowledge, they're giving into this pleasure and thinking that they're putting that benefit above the commitment that they made, that they said that they believe in. And so there's a kind of ignorance in the soul then that is leading them to do that. And you can see the same anytime that you're lying or you're stealing from somebody and you tell yourself, oh, it's a victimless crime. It's never a victimless crime. And so you have to really look at, is it really a bad thing? Or if it is a bad thing, why do I think there's something good in it? And you can't have it both ways, So either it's a social thing that's not really bad, or it is something unhealthy, but there's something unhealthy in you that is making you desire it anyway. And so anytime we're doing something that is truly wrong, if we're desiring it anyway, it means somewhere in our belief system there is an unhealthy belief there. And so nobody does wrong voluntarily. Nobody wants that unhealthiness in their soul. That's what he's talking about here. Okay, well, there's an evil great above all others, which most people have implanted in their souls, in which each one of them excuses in himself and makes no effort to avoid. It is the evil indicated in the saying that everybody is by nature a lover of self, and that it is right that he should be such. But the truth is that the cause of all sins in every case lies in the person's excessive love of self. And here, of course, he's referring to like ego self. Now, I put the Greek for the word sins because I want to point out that the root of this word is amartia. And amartia literally means to not witness something. And so it's often translated as not seeing something or missing the mark or making a mistake, to err, or any such synonym. The word sin is actually the word amartia is in the Bible, and it is translated as sin in the parts, of course, written in Greek. And it's translated as sin, and it has taken on then this religious flavor that Christianity has brought to it. But the word, as Plato's using it, has a much wider breadth of meaning. And so I just wanted to point that out here, that this last sentence is more accurately that the truth is that the cause of all wrongdoing or all mistakes in every case lies in the person's excessive love of self. And he's going to go on then to explain what he means by that. The lover is blind in his view of the object loved, so that he is a bad judge of things that are just and good and noble, in that he deems himself bound always to value what is his own more than what is true. For the person who is to attain the title of great must be devoted neither to himself nor to his own belongings, but to things that are just, whether they happen to be actions of his own or rather those of another person. So a lot of people hold it as a great virtue to be loyal to your friends and to defend them even when they're wrong. But Plato is saying here, no, it takes great strength to stand up to that and to say, actually, this is not good. And you're actually helping your friends if you help them see that something that they think is right is actually wrong. Thus, one should commend the noblest life, not merely because it is of superior fashion in respect of fair repute, but also because if a person consents to taste it and not shun it in his youth, this noblest of lives is superior likewise in that which we all covet, an excess, namely, of joy, and a deficiency of pain throughout the whole of life. So again, tying in that theme that we don't have to choose between a life of virtue or a happy life. The virtuous life actually is the happiest. So to sum up, the life of bodily and spiritual virtue, as compared with that of vice, is not only more pleasant, but also exceeds greatly in nobility, rectitude, virtue, and good fame, so that it causes the person who lives it to live ever so much more happily than he who lives the opposite life. Thus far we have stated the prelude of our laws, and here let that statement end. After the prelude must necessarily follow the tune, or rather, to be strictly accurate, a sketch of the state organization. So Book 4 also brought in this idea that we've come to the end of the prelude. So there he was talking about the right education and the study of music and so on, and bringing in the virtues. and saying, okay, now we have reached the end of the prelude. Looking at our false beliefs also was included there. And so what we're doing here, this sort of parallels book 4, in that we're saying, if you've done all of that work, if you've done all of the work up to now, then this is the state of mind you would be in. This is describing the sorts of attitudes and the sorts of behaviors that you would engage in. And so now we've come to the end of the prelude completely. We saw that the prelude was about purging what is false. And so now there's a little bit about purging. So in the case of the person, it is of the highest importance for the lawgiver to search out and to declare what is proper for each class, both as regards purging out and all other modes of treatment. So he's going to give us 2 forms of purging. Excuse me, my voice is a little scratchy today. Okay, so here's the best purge. It's a painful one. And like all medicines of a drastic nature, the purge which hails to punishments by means of justice, linked with vengeance, crowning the vengeance with exile or death. It, as a rule, clears out the greatest criminals when they are incurable and they cause serious damage to the state. So on the surface, if you're looking at this as a political dialogue, this is rather draconian, and it doesn't put Plato in a very positive light. Doesn't, what about all that talk about the betterment of people and so on, and not writing them off as losers? So this seems to go against it. But if you look at this as a lesson about the soul, as a statement about the soul, what he's saying is that the most effective purge is the strong one, the courageous one, and it can be painful to really look at yourself and to be honest about the things that you do wrong and the ignorance in your soul, and to be honest with yourself. It takes great courage to do this level of purge. What most people do is a more gentler purge, which he describes here. A milder form of purge is one of the following kind. When, owing to scarcity of food, people are in want, and they display a readiness to follow their leaders in an attack on the property of the wealthy. Then the lawgiver, regarding all such as a plague inherent in the body politic, just kind of gently ships them abroad, as gently as possible, giving the euphemistic title of emigration to their evacuation. So you're maybe not as honest with yourself about what is ignorant or bad or wrong, but you're just kind of, pushing that aside and just trying to follow what is wiser. And you can certainly go on this way for a while. I can tell you from experience that if you stick with this sort of lifestyle long enough, you're going to have to deal with this stuff eventually. But let us assume that there is a suitable number. Oh yeah, so here he brings in the number 5040. I should just comment on this for a moment before I read. So it's an odd number to bring in. It's sort of representing the soul as a whole. And there's some question as to why he brings it up. But, well, first let's see what he says about it. So 5040 people to be landholders and to defend their plots. And let the land and houses be likewise divided into the same number of parts, the person and his allotment forming together one division. First, let the whole number be divided into 2, next into 3, then follow in natural order 4 and 5, and so on up to 10. Now you'll find that this number, 5040, has a huge number of divisors. 1 through 10 all divide evenly, and then 12 and 14 and 15, and it goes on. I forget all of them, but there's a huge list of them. And I think that's part of the reason that he chose this number. Here's more what he says about it. He says, regarding numbers, everybody who is making laws must understand at least thus much. What number and what kind of number will be most useful for all states? So let us choose that which contains the most numerous and most consecutive subdivisions. Number as a whole comprises every division for all purposes, whereas the number 5040, for purposes of war and in peace for all purposes connected with contributions and distributions, will admit of division into no more than 59 sections, these being consecutive from 1 up to 10. And so being able to divide and add and do many different functions with it, I think is part of why he chose this. Also, when you have this large number of divisors, then you have this feeling of a certain harmony within the soul. There's a unity. There's a certain symmetry about it as well, and these are all terms that we use to describe the soul. And so I think that's why he wanted a number that has a large number of divisors, like 5040. That number, by the way, will come up again in later books as well. Okay, when assemblies of each of the sections take place at the appointed times, they may provide an ample supply of things requisite, and the people may fraternize with one another at the sacrifices and gain knowledge and intimacy, since nothing is of more benefit to the state than this mutual acquaintance. For where people conceal their ways from one another in darkness rather than light, there no one will ever rightly gain either his due honor or office, or the justice that is benefiting. So we don't want some false belief lurking in the darkness in our soul. This idea came up also in the Republic as well, and there is the imagery of a society where everybody's affections are on the same page, so to speak, where they cry about the same things and they laugh about the same things and so on. And this again is the idea of the temperate soul, the wise soul, where the desires fall in line with what is wise, and so there's no friction, there are no battles going on within. And so this sort of friendship, a mutual acquaintance as he's calling it here, is the mark of a healthy soul. So that state and polity come first, and those laws are best where there is observed as carefully as possible throughout the whole state the old saying that friends have all things in common. So that same image. And so here's his description of the best constitution. Here he's talking on the surface story here of the political constitution, but I think that by this time we can all clearly see the parallels to the soul. That all people are, so far as possible, unanimous in the praise and blame they bestow, rejoicing and grieving at the same things. And they honor with all their heart those laws which render the state as unified as possible. No one will ever lay down another definition that is truer or better than these conditions in point of super excellence. In such a state, or soul, be it gods or sons of gods that dwell in it, they dwell pleasantly, living such a life as this. Wherefore one should not look elsewhere for a model constitution, but hold fast to this one, and with all one's power seek the constitution that is as like to it as possible. Okay, so this is what we want to shape our souls to be. This is our goal. How great a blessing the ordinance now described, when the appropriate organization accompanies it. Provides to all the states that obey it. That is a thing which, as the old proverb says, none that is evil shall know, but only he that has become experienced and practiced in virtuous habits. Excuse me. This is sort of a clumsy sentence, but I think what's really important here is this last part. That and evil, by the way, much like the word sin, has taken on a different connotation in our modern culture. But for Plato, yes, people do awful things and they do things that we would describe as evil, but it's out of ignorance that they do so. And so people who still have ignorance in their soul, they may have theories about the wise soul, this wise state of mind that Plato has been describing up to now. But if it's just a theory for you, you don't really know it. You may understand it on some level, but you don't fully understand it. You don't know it. It's the person who's become experienced and practiced in these habits who can truly know it. You have to live it. It's not something you just talk about. It's something you have to live and become. He says, I would never concede to them that the rich man is really happy if he is not also good. While if a person is superlatively good, it is impossible that he should be also superlatively rich. Why so, it may be asked? Because we would reply that the financial gain derived from both right and wrong is more than double that from right alone. So there's a long discussion here about wealth I just pulled this one quote out as I think this representative of Plato's position here. So some traditions teach that that the wise person should give all their money away and live in poverty. Plato did not support that. He's fine with people having some wealth. It's fine having a roof over your head. You want to feed your family and so on. He's saying that you can have some degree of both. Wealth does not make you happy. But if the wealthy person is also good, the good person is happy whether rich or not, right? But then he goes on to say that for a person who is superlatively good, that person will not be superlatively rich. And the reason is because you can gain some wealth by doing things that are in line with the wise life, but most wealth comes in the shadows, or even just in those gray areas, sort of between good and bad, not quite good. And so the gain that is derived from both those healthy ways and the not so good ways is more than double the wealth you would gain from doing just what is good. So the superlatively good person will never be superlatively rich, he's saying. He says, now the fundamental purpose of our laws was this, that the citizens should be as happy as possible and in the highest degree united in mutual friendship. So it's a theme we've seen many times already. We say that in the state there must be neither gold nor silver, nor must there be much money making by means of vulgar trading or usury or the fattening of gelded beasts, but only such profit as farming offers and yields, and of this only so much as will not drive a person by his money making to neglect the objects for which money exists. These objects are soul and the body, which without gymnastic and the other branches of education would never become things of value. So just a reminder that our focus is on the soul. It's fine to make money, but it should not come at the cost of sacrificing these higher purposes in life, these branches of education. And just a reminder that for him, gymnastic is not our understanding of it. It's the building of spiritual energy. And music also, it's not here in this quote, but that is the study of states of mind. If you take these on face value, it's rather strange that he would put this as so of such high value, that doing gymnastics is so important. It overrides, money making or any other endeavors. But he's saying that these studies of philosophy, this building of energy that comes through the study of states of mind and the study of metaphysics and the various branches of education, as he laid them out in the Republic especially well. But these studies, this life of philosophy, far outweighs money making. Thus the lawgiver must oftentimes put this question to himself: what is it that I intend? And am I succeeding in this, or am I wide of the mark? In this way, he might perhaps get through the task of legislation himself and save others the trouble of it. But in no other way could he ever possibly do so. So we've seen, this was again in the Republic, that the wisdom-loving part of the soul is not only the part of the soul that pursues wisdom, but also the part that maintains the wisdom that we've gained up to now. And so that's what he's talking about here, that the lawgiver in us, that wisdom-loving part of the soul, has to keep an eye on our state of mind, keep checking on us. Is this what I intend? Am I still following the right path? Am I wide of my mark? Have I gone off the path? Have I gotten distracted by something? So we have to constantly do this sort of questioning of ourselves to maintain our wisdom. And I want to end us with this final quote here. This is on the surface a very dry quote, but it actually is something very beautiful. In dealing with all schemes for the future, the fairest plan, I think, is this: that the person who exhibits the pattern on which the undertaking is to be modeled should omit no detail of perfect beauty and truth. But where any of them is impossible of realization, that particular detail he should omit and leave unexecuted, but contrive to execute instead whatever of the remaining details comes nearest to this, and is by nature most closely akin to the right procedure. And he should allow the lawgiver to express his ideal completely, And when this is done, then and only then should they both consult together as to how far their proposals are expedient and how much of the legislation is impractical. So our goal then is to make again our soul as godlike as is humanly possible, and that means that the model that we are looking at, the pattern that we are modeling our soul on, is the perfect beauty and truth of the divine. And so this is what we want to look at. But of course, we're works in progress. This is what we're working towards, but we're not there yet necessarily. So maybe it's impossible for us to be there right now. And we acknowledge that. We omit or leave out some things, but we make ourselves as close as we can today, and we keep working on it. Now, he says that we want to allow the lawgiver to express his ideal completely. What that means in practice is we have to open ourselves up, be open to divine knowledge, to providential goodness. And we've already seen that the spiritual realm is the means by which gods and humans communicate with one another. So we want to open this channel that was discussed in Book 4. And when this occurs, then we can consult together. So here's this term, consulting together. And this is really spiritual life, being open to the divine. We may communicate with the divine through ritual practice, through meditation, through our contemplations. And then we open ourselves to divine goodness in much of these same ways, also through our dreams and through looking at our random thoughts, even in our daydreams, and seeing what providential wisdom is coming through by those means. And so this statement on the surface, it's a very dry political statement. It's also one very long sentence with a lot of commas, and it's just a really bulky sentence. But when you open it up, what you see is what I think is a very beautiful and rich spiritual life. This is the spiritual life being described really in one very long, dry sentence. And so I want to leave you with that as the end of Book 5. Again, if you have any questions and comments, feel free to leave them below. If you want a direct response from me, there's also an email address in the description box. As always, I'd always appreciate a thumbs up if you like what you saw. And think about sharing and subscribing, sharing with your friends, subscribing. If you don't already, you will get notifications whenever I put out a new video. And I do hope that you will join me next time for Book 6. Thank you very much.